This comedy special is all about my experiences of Hungarian culture and language. So there will be lots and lots of jokes about Hungary. It's best appreciated by those who know something about Magyar. Enjoy.
Your main act, the main attraction of the night, the wonderful, the brilliant, the fantastic Conrad Molden.
Good evening, Budapest. Thank you ever so much for having me here this evening. My name is Conrad. I actually come from Great Britain. Have you heard about Great Britain? Some people remember Great Britain. It's a very arrogant name for a country when you think about it, isn't it? Didn't age very well, did it? Came from Great Britain. Not shitty Little Britain like you. What I'm trying to say is thank you ever so much for having me here in the European Union this evening. That's really nice of you guys. It's very sweet of you. Thank you. Thank you. It's difficult dating after Brexit. I'm married now to a Hungarian and she thinks I'm in it for the visa. It was crazy when Brexit was going on as well because there was all this kind of doom and gloom around Brexit, and I was one of those people telling people what it would be like after Brexit happened. People said to me, Conrad, what will the UK look like? And I was like, well, you've got to imagine the skyline of London, but all of the buildings have collapsed. And the sky is filled with black ash from all the burning money in the barrels in the street, and there are people in rags warming their hands around these barrels of money. And then there's a big crack in the road, and climbing out of the crack in the road is a half-naked child. And he's looking for food, and he finds a bin, and then he finds some fish and chips, and he starts eating the fish and chips from the bin. And my friend said to me, wow, Conrad, you're an optimist. That's good. That's nice. You think they'll have fish and chips after Brexit? That's good. There's some things I'm trying to understand about this beautiful and fine country. I'm trying to make some little bits of jokes about your crazy language. I've come up with a really fantastic joke. What do two mice say when they cheers? Egge Shegadre. Thank you. Thank you. It's a fantastic joke. I also like the ticket system here. You have these, it's the silliest system I think I've ever seen. It's the smallest tickets ever in order to get on the bus. And have you seen the tickets that they give you? It's like the wings of a butterfly. It's so, here's a tiny piece of paper you will immediately lose forever. It's so unbelievably, it's gone. I can't, where did it, so, and why does it have a Sudoku on it as well on the bottom? You solve the Sudoku and it flies away. I actually really like taking the metro, especially when you go on the escalators and you leave the metro system, especially when you're at one of these stations where it's a really long escalator, because coming towards you is just a mountain, a row of the most depressed people you've ever seen in your... Have you seen? Everybody is older and more depressed than the last person that just came. Of course, there's a little bit of reason to be a little bit sad in the country. Things are a little bit difficult in the country at the moment, and we know this is true because Hungarian people are eating the cheap Turul-Rudi. They are. Hungarians have now decided to start eating fake Turul-Rudi. That's when you know. And they used to eat the fake Turul-Rudi and tell you it was horrible. Like, yeah, it's not good. But now things are hard and like, yeah, it's from Spar, and it actually tastes okay. It's all right. It's, we're getting used to it. Things are hard here in Hungary. Somebody told me that to save electricity, that in Hungary they've actually turned off the light at the end of the tunnel. That's good. I was at the airport and Hungarian guy told me a great joke. It's not my joke, but I really want to share it with you guys. A guy dies, he goes to hell, Satan shows him around. He takes him over to like a big pit, and inside the pit are all of these kind of souls swimming around, all the different dead people. And when they try to escape out of the pit, there are these devils with pitchforks, and they poke the people back into the pit. He says, what's going on here? And Satan says, yes, this is for the British people. And when they try to escape, the devils, they poke them and they have to go back in. The guy takes them on to the next pit. The next pit is even bigger. And inside are all these different souls, all these different dead people, but now they're wearing berets. And when they try to get out, they're being poked by the devils with the pitchforks. And Satan says, yes, this is for the French people. This is where the French people go. And then they go to a third pit, and it's very, very big, and it's filled with all of these souls moving around. But when they get to the edge, there are no devils with pitchforks. Instead, the souls get to the edge, and then they just slide back in. And he says, what's going on here? And Satan says, yes, this is the Hungarians. When one of them tries to escape, the others just pull him back in. I like, it's a very international mix in the room this evening, and I like that. I think it's really cool. There's lots of fun things to do with language. I know we've been making fun of Americans. One of my favorite things about Americans is they always want to borrow things. I remember being at the beach with a friend of mine, and he said, oh my God, Conrad, can I borrow some suntan lotion? How the fuck are you going to scrape that shit off your skin and put it back in the bottle? Here you go. But I'm attempting a little bit to improve my Hungarian. It's very difficult, though, because, you know, Hungarian, they tell you that they have 44 letters in their alphabet. That's a lot of letters. I was excited for that. I was very, very excited to see that. And then I started looking at the Hungarian alphabet, and I think there's a little bit of cheating going on. Because some of those letters really look like two letters. Have you seen? Like, oh, DZS, yeah, that's a letter. That's its own letter. That's 3 letters. I could just make up my own language. Yeah, AB, that's now a letter. Yeah. And BA, that's now a letter. Yeah. ABBA, 2 letters. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's my new... But somebody was, I was actually a bit disappointed when I learned about the alphabet. And somebody was telling me that Hungarian is a very cynical language and that you actually have a phrase in Hungarian where you can say that you are pleasantly disappointed. Can I ask, are you Hungarian, sir? Would you mind telling the audience how you say it?
Kellemesen csalódtam.
That's the most cynical thing I've ever heard. How was it when you went to his house? Well, I was pleasantly disappointed. I thought that his wife would be incredibly boring and the food would be terrible. But his wife was all right and I could eat the food. You know, yes. Hungarian is always different. This is what confuses me. In lots of other languages, it's always a little bit similar. Somehow you can kind of see the same. Not in Hungarian. Nothing. Even like glass, it's like muji, muji. Everything is different. The only things that I found that are even slightly similar is mosaic, which in Hungarian is mosaic. A jumper in Hungarian is called pullover, which is the most Hunglified thing I've ever seen ever. Yes, it's pullover. It's a Hungarian word. And my absolute favorite is when you go on holiday, everything is in Hungarian except all-inclusive. These are the 3 words that the Hungarians stole. But you can make any word Hungarian. All you have to do is you just have to say it, but a little bit sad. Like, they don't have Instagram in Hungary, they have Instagram. There are no pictures of you smiling on your Instagram. No, it's Instagram. Even the word for happiness in Hungarian sounds sad. Bulldog shag. I was shagging a bulldog. It was very sad. The word for lively in Hungarian is e-link. That's the least lively word. That sounds like a startup company that does like electronics, doesn't it? Where are you working? E-link. It does sometimes get a little bit gangster though. If you want to say a good day to somebody, you can say Jonapot. If you're feeling really gangster, you can say Jonapot. Which is pretty gangster. I remember hearing that I was in the DM and somebody went Jonapot. I was like, wow, I didn't know Snoop Dogg went to DM. That's... Before I came to Central Europe, I actually watched a really good documentary series all about Central Europe. It's called Game of Thrones. It's fantastic. Very lifelike, very accurate. I like the way that they even have this thing called the Dothraki. That's the Serbians. That's really nice. They actually filmed some of the scenes of Game of Thrones here in Hungary. Did you know that? That's totally true. Like those, the scenes with the Army of the Dead, that was filmed at on the last day of Azora Festival. Yeah, that's true. It's totally true. But the Hungarian language it's a crazy one. It's a difficult one. I've learned that all of the superheroes are the same. They don't call it Superman, Superman, or Captain America, Captain America. But they do translate one of them. Spider-Man is not Spider-Man. Pokembe. Just him. I think that there was like a superhero translation guy who just got really bored on day one. They're like, okay, Janos, quickly start translating them. Okay. Pokembe, I'm done. It's finished. Did Janos finish the fucking... It's going printing now. But I love that they did just one. That's great. It's also funny that if you attempt to learn the Hungarian language, you realize that there is not just one word for something. Everything has multiple words. There's the official word, and then there's like the extra thing. Like I have a friend called Zoli, and I thought that his name was Zoli. I thought that was his name. No, it turns out his name is Zoltan. Also a superhero next to Pokembe. Who is Pokembe fighting? He's fighting Zoltan. But that's it. It's the same in everything. Even potato here in Hungary, even potato has its official word. And then what does it have? Its own PR team where it has another word? Because officially it's called Borgonja. But everybody calls it Krumpli. What is this, celebrity fucking potato? One of my favourite words is the word for turtle, Teknusch. Sounds like a German rave club, doesn't it? Yeah. Tonight we are going to Teknusch. I get to travel a lot for my job, which is really good fun. Something I find really boring here in Europe is the euro. The euro is very boring. These people mastered the most boring-looking currency that you can ever imagine. And that's why I love coming to Hungary, because my God, the money is amazing. It's just a montage of the craziest moustaches you have ever seen. You know when you feel like you're on holiday, when there's a fucking badass, like Attila the Hun is on the money, you know what I mean? My favorite is the 10,000 that's got Jesus on it. That's so badass. So cool. I don't understand these shops, DM, Rossmann, where you go in and they refuse to translate anything. You walk in and you want to buy a product, and you're like, oh, fuck, now I need to speak German. I don't understand. Why is everything in German? It's not like Hungary is a tiny little country in the corner of the world, 50 people. It's 10.5 million people, and the Germans are like, nein, we are not going to translate. No, no. You need to learn how to say fucking douche in German. I've been visiting my wife's family, and they come from a place called Eger. Have you heard of Eger? Yeah. Well, okay, that's a lot of Eger people. Mainly on this is the Eger side of the room. Eger is a really cool, beautiful little city in the north. And something that's really crazy is that I was sitting indoors at my wife's dad's house, and outside in the street I heard this strange sound. It sounded like da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I am as confused as the people who don't understand what's happening. Right? I was like, what the fuck is going on? And it turns out that it's a little truck that drives around that sells eggs. Because apparently it's still 1910 in Hungary. Nobody told Janos that they invented the supermarket yet or something, I don't know. I didn't realise that that's such a sweet answer to be like, oh my God, what is that sound? What is that weird alarm going on? Oh, it's a very sweet old man who's selling eggs. That's such a nice answer to it. Because when I first heard that, coming in the distance, I was like, oh shit, the Russians are here. This is terrifying. I learned a lot while I was in Eger. I learned that whenever you see a construction, I guess it's not just in Eger, but all over Hungary, whenever you see a construction, there's always a large group of men. And I have a question for you. How many Hungarians does it take to dig a hole? The answer is 6. 1 to dig the hole and 5 to watch. Always. There's always one guy, probably called Laszlo, who's digging like this. And then there's like 5 people standing around him like this. And I love these people because 4 of them will be in the stuff that you need to wear to be and there'll be one guy in his own clothes. Just in a Hard Rock Cafe t-shirt, just standing. And you ask Hungarian people, like, he's not with them, he's not officially, and like, oh, that's Laszlo's friend, of course he's here. What? So good, I got to be with my wife and her family up in Eger, and her dad's name is Nudge Upper, which is pretty cool, Big Daddy. It's so cool being at Big Daddy's house, oh yeah. I don't drink a lot of coffee. I know that in Hungary you guys drink a lot of coffee, and I tried to get into that lifestyle. He has a machine in his house, and every morning I would go down and be like, I'm going to live the new Hungarian lifestyle. I'm going to turn this thing on. I'm going to have me a cup of coffee. Now, when you first turn on a coffee machine, after it's been off for a long time, it doesn't make you a cup of coffee. It actually runs a cleaning process where it takes cleaning fluid and runs it through the machine, and it puts that in a cup. Yeah, I didn't realize that. My wife would come in the morning. Conrad, what the fuck are you drinking and why is it grey? Babe, I don't know, but the coffee here in Hungary, it tastes like shit. I gotta tell you, it's fucking... Being at Big Daddy's house is one test of your integration into the country, but your biggest part of the integration that you will go through is meeting your Hungarian partner's grandparents. Yeah, these people are hardcore, okay? Because they don't live in Budapest, they don't live in Ege, they live in these tiny little satellite towns. And by town, I mean there's a tractor and some people are looking at the tractor, okay? It's this tiny... Her grandparents live out in this tiny little place called Novi. Have you heard about Novi? Yeah. Wow, okay, Novi's getting really popular now. Holy fuck. It's got 7 searches on Google now, that is amazing. And it's such an experience to go there because the first thing that you have to do is see the farm. You have to walk around and you have to see everything. They show you everything. They show you all of the burgonya, all of the potatoes. You can't call them that. They're wearing sunglasses. They're like, whoa, his name's Crumply. All right, yeah. And then they start showing you other things that you have in the West, like garlic. And then they start showing you the weird vegetables. You know, the weird, and how Hungarian people are like, oh, that's muji puji. And you're like, what the fuck is... It looks like a 7-headed dildo. What the fuck is this? Oh, it's great in the soup. Okay. You go. You don't know 7-headed dildo soup. It's so good. Very traditional. And then you go into some kind of dark cellar basement thing and you start walking down and this is where they make the palinka and they make the wine. And it's such a good place to be because you think, they say, oh, do you want to do a wine tasting? And you're like, oh yes, of course, absolutely. What this actually translates to is you need to drink at least one enormous glass of every single wine. From the last 80 years that have been made in this basement. And then, of course, there's the jams. You know, when they show you the jams. They're like, yes, here are the jams. The shelf is like this. There's just, Hungarians never run out of jam. I don't know if you've been to a supermarket. You can't even buy jam in the supermarket. There's no market for it. Everyone's like, no, I have grandparents, okay? I get 65 liters of jam a week from my grandparents. And then, of course, you leave the cellar, you're absolutely smashed. And what you need is a meal, of course. You go inside the house, and just before you start eating, there'll be a knock at the door. And then there will be, of course, random village family that have just come over, you know, accidentally. You know, that they're like, oh, we saw your lights were on, we're here. Yes, whoops, by accident, we have come over to your front door. We roasted a lamb, oh no. And then there's like 20 minutes of the grandparents arguing with the neighbors backwards and forwards. No, I can't come in. Please come in. No, you can't. You have to cut off my legs if you want me to come in. I would cut off your legs and cook them. Okay. So 20 minutes passes and then suddenly that person and their entire family and the entire village is now around the smallest table you've ever seen in your whole life. And then they bring the food marathon. Hungarian grandparents, oh my God, the way they show their love to children is just food. Not compassion, talking about feelings, fuck that shit. No, stuff meat into their mouths, stuff a cabbage into a pig and put that into a child's mouth. That's how you show them that you love them. And it's a never-ending marathon of food and sweat, and you get the meat sweats, and you go to shit, and you come back, and you throw up, and you go through this. And then my absolute favorite part is right at the end when everybody is exhausted, completely smashed, and then the grandmother appears with an enormous tray of cakes. The final boss. And it's not one little cake, it's 7 cakes that she baked. Where do grandparents, do they live on another, is it like Interstellar where they live on another planet where time slows down? How did you make 6 dinners and 7 cakes? I don't understand. They should be drug dealers, is what they should be. That's all Hungarian grandmothers should be cocaine dealers. Do you want a cake? Would you like a cake? Do you want some cake? And then they bring out the palinka. Have you guys tried palinka? And some people in your country, they call it Sillet Bang. And they will bring it out. And then, it's true, you can use Palinka for many things, it's true. They're always telling you this. You're like, I'm so full. They're like, it works for being full. I have a stomach flu. It works for the stomach flu. My car engine is not working. It works for the car engine. I have coronavirus. It works for the coronavirus. That's how hardcore Hungarians are about Palinka. In 2010, the political situation in the country was not good, and it looked like there might be a change in government. And do you know what the government said? You can make Palinka in your house. And the Hungarian people are like, oh, okay. I can brew it in my own house. Yeah. So now everybody has an incredibly unstable distillery in their house. It's about 3 minutes away from exploding. But there is one place in Hungary that you don't want to be, and that is, of course, on the internet. I don't know what happens to Hungarian people when they go on the internet. They turn into the most horrible in the street. They're so friendly. And then on the internet, they're the worst people ever. I was in the Eger Facebook group. This is a true story. And I thought my Eger Shegedre joke was pretty good. You remember the joke that you thought was fucking hilarious? I thought I put that joke, hey, I even translated it. I ruined my wife's afternoon by I'm like, babe, you need to translate. She's like, the joke is shit. Please translate. Please. That's what I love about internationals in Hungary. We have to ask Hungarian people for help with the language. We can't trust Google. You put it into Google Translate, makes no. I'd be like, please, you have to. There's a D, a Z, and an S. Is that one letter? You have to help me now. So she translated for me, and I posted it in the group. The hatred that I got. Oh my God. There are paedophiles who have been less harassed than it was awful. It was horrible. And it's in a real contrast to where I live at the moment. I live in Denmark. It's a very sweet Scandinavian country. People are very friendly. Where me and my wife live, we have a Facebook group for our little area. We have a common kind of playground with a little garden that actually has a communal pizza oven. And people are so sweet when they post in the group. Here are 2 real posts that people made. Somebody posted in there and said, hi, everybody. Just wondering if anyone's interested in some tomato plants. We've been growing tomato plants in our... I know the problems in Denmark, right? There are too many tomato plants in our garden. Oh no. And we can't just throw them in the bin like a normal person. So we have to put them in little pots, and we put them outside our front door. And you can leave a little 5 kroners coin in a little tray if you want to buy one. Somebody posted that in the group. I know. And then there was a public holiday coming up, and they posted in the group, and they said, soon it will be autumn holiday, and if anybody would like, we are going to light up the pizza oven, and you're very welcome to bring your friends and family and come down and make pizzas. It's so sweet. It broke my little heart. And I was just imagine if I had posted those kinds of things in the Eger group. Can you imagine? Hi, I put some tomato plants outside the front. What a mess you have created with your tomato, ruining the common area with your horrible tomato plants. It's terrible. Would anybody like to join for a bit? What a waste of flour. Why would you waste good flour on Italian pizzas? It's not even Hungarian. Where did you get the wood for the pizza oven? Where did you pay for the wood? Who paid for the wood? There is wood missing. Where is the wood? Should be cooking good Hungarian food like sausage. Virsli. None of this EU shit. Langos, exactly. Like, comment, Langos, yes. 257 likes. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a crazy heat wave in Hungary. There was an absolutely mental heat wave. And the government actually put out a message that said, please stay away from alcohol, please stay away from direct sunlight, and please stay away from greasy food. This is the opposite of Hungarians. Me and my wife went down to Strand, where you can go swimming. In the middle of the Strand, in the middle of the grass, was Janos. Fresh from digging that hole, 11 bellies. He's just in the midday sun with a can of Borshodi. And in the other hand, he was holding a knife, and he was just cutting a paprika sausage. Perfect, I love it so much. I was looking at myself in the mirror on the way here, and I was thinking that I have a bit of a weird face, don't you think? I do. I have a little bit of a weird face because I don't look old and I don't look young. I just sort of look fucked up, don't I? Like if you saw me on the Budapest Underground system, you'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, you do heroin. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you do glue as well? Is that... But I don't do heroin and I don't do glue. The reason I look like this is because I have 2 children. That's right. I have these terrible eye bags on my face. My eyes look like they've been shopping at DM. Recently bought all of the discount items in DM. But I am actually only 32 years old. I was born in 1990. Is anybody here born in 1990? Okay, what? Okay. 2 people, somebody second later clapping. Yeah. I want to be born then as well. It's weird being born at a round year because I've realized that in order to find out my age at any given time, I just need to add 10 years. Yeah, so someone would be like, hey, in 2011, I'll be like, yeah, I was 21 in 2011. Because I just added 10 to 11. Such a cool technique. I was using it so much, I'd be reading the news and be like, in 2005, and I'm like, yeah, fucking 15. I was feeling really confident. I was explaining this to my wife, and she looked at me and said, Conrad, nobody is impressed by you remembering your own birthday. But we do have 2 children, and it's crazy being the guy in that relationship because, when you're making a child, there's one person doing a lot of work and one person not doing so much. Having a child as the man is a bit like doing a group work project. We've all done a group work project. And there's that one person that does all the reading, all the research, all the writing, makes all of the graphs, gets all of the pictures together. And then my job as the guy was to name the Dropbox folder. Yes, that's exactly what I did. Does anybody in this room have children? Give me a clap. All right. Some very tired claps over there. Yes, it's the evening and I have to clap. This is awful. Having a child is a bit weird because when they're very small, when they're a tiny little baby, it's a very weird relationship you have because they're not reacting to you, They're just like wiggling around, looking around. You could not be there and they'd be doing the same thing. It's a bit like the relationship that Tom Hanks has with that volleyball on that island. That's what it's like having a baby. They're like, oh, are you happy? And they're like, I don't even know you're here. This is great. My children are older now, they're growing up, and that can be a bit stressful. It can be really difficult with children. They take up a lot of your time, and by the end of the day, you kind of have no time left. You still have to read them stories in the evening before you put them to bed, but you're so exhausted, you kind of want it to be over. I've had those evenings before, and my son is asking me to pick a book, and I choose it, and I'm like, okay, Jack and Jill went up the hill. To be continued. All right, good night. It's weird when you first have a baby because people come over and they visit you and they come to see you and they drink your normal coffee that's not grey and they hang out with you and spend time at your home. And I remember some of the first people that came to visit when our first son was very, very small. They came over and they're standing around and they're drinking coffee and inevitably the baby does a poo. Spoiler alert for anybody in the room that's about to have a child, they crap at the most inconvenient times. So you need to go and change your baby. So you take them into the bedroom, to the changing table, and those coffee people, they come with you. That's true. They follow you in from drinking coffee and watch you wipe a child's anus. They watch you smear shit off of another human being. And they're just they're not talking about like, oh my God, what's that? They're just, oh yeah. Yeah, did you hear about Janosch's sunburn? Yeah, that's crazy. And you're clean. That's the only member of the family that we do that with. You wouldn't all be sitting around the table at lunch, would you? Oh, wait. Grandma's done a shit. Come on, everybody, to the bathroom. I went to Budapest Airport, which was a really fun experience when we were flying in here. I flew with something called Ryanair. Have you heard about Ryanair? Give me a clap if you've ever flown with Ryanair. There is some sadness in those claps. You hear that? People at the back judging you. Oh my God, I fly Lufthansa, thank you very much. Ryanair is a really crazy experience. For anybody who doesn't know, it's basically a bus with wings. It's a situation, yeah. It's a very smelly bus with wings that you have to get on board. And I remember when we arrived at the airport. Of course, it says that the flight is already boarding, so you're panicking, even though there's nobody even there. So we were rushing through security, and my son was asleep in the Babakochi. He was asleep in the pram. So as we got into the security thing, they said, we need to actually take your baby and we need to scan your baby. I was like, my baby is sleeping. And he said, no, we need to take the baby and we need to scan the baby. I was like, scan my baby? Which country are we in? This is fucked up. Take my baby, scan my baby? He was like, yeah, we need to scan the baby. And I was like, yeah, what are you going to find on him? A gun? Put a 3-month baby through the thing. Beep, 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 beep. Oh my God, he's got a Kalashnikov. I never knew you were in ISIS. He said, we're not scanning for weapons, we're scanning for drugs. And I went, whoa. Any cocaine you find on that baby is that baby's cocaine, all right? He's having a really difficult time right now, okay? And then we arrive at the Ryanair ordeal. And what I don't understand about this airline at all is that the people are dressed in uniforms. You know, they're dressed neat and tidy, and they have like little things and jackets and slogans. They don't need any of that. Somebody should tell this company they don't need any of it. We would still fly with you. If it was just a white plane with no we would still go. They don't need uniforms. They don't even need proper staff. I remember when we were getting on the plane, there was like a very well-dressed lady standing at the top of the stairs, and as people walking on, she would say, good morning, madam. Good morning, sir. There are no madams or sirs getting on a Ryanair. It could just be some obese guy, Janosch, 6 bellies hanging down. And as people are getting on the plane, he's like, wanker, wanker, wanker. And you would still fly with them. You just go, all right, that's why it was €9.99 return. I understand now. One last little thing, if you wouldn't mind. And that is that as a father now, I've been rewatching some of the Harry Potter films. And I've got to say there's a big difference now being a child and watching those films and being a dad. Because I don't think those films are suitable anymore. I've been rewatching them with a father's eyes, and I think that they're a really bad example for our children because those children in those films are not studying. They're not. Have you seen that first film? Those kids are running around that school and messing around with the administration of that school. They should be sat at their desks learning, okay? It's a really bad message. I think that first film should just end with Dumbledore being arrested. Dumbledore in handcuffs and Hagrid hammering across over the entrance to Hogwarts. That's how that film should end. And then what would they do with the children? They would have to send them back home, wouldn't they? And what would they do with Harry Potter? Send him back to Muggleland. Brexit Britain. What would he come back to? Collapsed economy. Pound is in the bin. No job prospects. So what does he do? He decides to teach English in Hungary. The second Harry Potter film should be Harry Potter and the Budapest Language School. Of course, that company goes bankrupt. There's not a lot that he's got left to do, so he decides to become an influencer. The third film should be Harry Potter and the skincare pyramid scheme. Of course, that doesn't last very long. That goes bankrupt. And the final and fourth film, Harry Potter and the Walt delivery job. You guys have been so much fun. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.
Nem repültök, mint a szép sas, mert tele a begyetek. Kotkodács, kotkodács, egy kis jó árulkodás.